I asked you at a dinner party or a drinks party what you did, you'd probably say I'm an architect. Now, nothing wrong with that, because that's what you're qualified to do. The only problem with that is, from a marketing point of view, there's a lot of architects around. There's 80,000 architects registered in the US alone, and it doesn't make you particularly special other than the fact you're an architect, and it's hard to do. But if there's a room full of architects, it doesn't make you special. So one of the things you have to do, and to some degree, if you've done this stuff, laws 1, 2, and 3, you're kind of already halfway there. But you do need to limit supply. So we don't want to talk so much about being an architect, nothing wrong with being an architect, but we need to talk about the special services that we provide and the way we do it. Now, there are a number of ways to limit supply. We kind of want to be the only architect who is offering a result that a small number of high-value people who are looking to get some high-value result are looking to get. We kind of want a monopoly on that. Now, De Beers diamonds in South Africa, originally they were reasonably scarce, and then in South Africa, they discovered in a river, they kept finding diamonds everywhere. And the problem was the market got flooded, and they were going, this is terrible. Diamonds are no longer a scarce resource. So what the companies did is they formed something called De Beers Consolidated Mining, which is where all the diamond companies ended up going in together and effectively creating one company, which then proceeded to limit the supply of diamonds so that they could maintain their value, right? If everyone can find diamonds, it's a problem. So it really effectively price fixing, forming an oligopoly, and off to the races we are. That's one way. If you could buy all the other architects out in your area and just form one firm, well, that's going to be hard to do, so you can't do that. The other thing that we like doing is creating a new category. So, Bruce Lee, born in San Francisco, but then moved to Hong Kong and moved back to San Francisco, was a kung fu fighter, and he'd do a lot of fighting on the streets. And after a while, he realized there were problems with kung fu fighting on the streets, because if an issue of fighting someone else who did kung fu, they wouldn't follow the kung fu rules. And kung fu was only good when you were fighting against people following the rules. So he created a different martial art called Jeet Kune Do. And in Jeet Kune Do, you're allowed to be a little more flexible than kung fu. And his mantra was think like water, right? You've got to be flexible. You've got to be fluid. And he created Jeet Kune Do, which he said was superior. Now, if you bought into his philosophy and his story about Jeet Kune Do, he was the only game in town, right? He became number one in a category of one on day one, right? So that's one of the things that we look and do. We look to create new categories, which immediately limits supply because you're the only person in it, right? It's a bit of an art to it. You can be a specialist. That certainly limits the supply and your perceived the supply of your particular type. You can do a specialist. That's sort of the blue belt level. Creating new categories would be more of a black belt level. The other thing you want to do, and all these builders last night, lucky for them, not through great marketing, just the market down here, they all had waiting lists for clients. Now, if you've got a waiting list, then it's a good thing, and it plays into this thing of, you are scarce in supply, which is where we want you, scarce in supply, right? So you've got high value client, high value result that you can deliver. You have a high value process. It is perceived. It's perceived that you are in scarce supply, right? Either you've constructed it or it's actually a fact. Then what we need is law number 5. We need proof. In fact, more than proof, we actually need the way to be able to explain your value. You need to be able to articulate. You need to be able to articulate your value and prove your value. If I go articulate and prove, right? It's not enough to be the best, have I guess, have high value clients with high value results and limiting supply if no one knows about you. So you've got to be able to tell the story. Now, in terms of stories, you do have to have the words, right? You do have to craft words which explain elegantly and quickly what and how you do it. Right now, I'll show you. I'll once I've gone through these this mind map, I'll draw something on the screen and I'll show you how I do it. And it will be something that you will be able to do. I'll do that at the end when we get to the Q&A. But you need a story, or you need some visuals that support, your specialness, and then you need to prove it. Now, proving it is interesting. If we're in a court of law and you were trying to prove something, the level of proof would need to be a much higher standard than a selling situation, obviously. Right? If you quote any numbers or pieces of evidence, they will go over that piece of evidence. They'll check its validity. They'll send out private investigators sometimes to check the validity of it. And that, it'll be really, really, really thorough in a court of law. In a selling situation, sometimes just a good story is proof enough, right? Sometimes just a good story. Now, there are other things you can use. You can use numbers, stats. Statistics count as proof. Stories count as proof. Graphics count as proof. I mean, they're not necessarily airtight proof, all these things, but they look it. They can look it. What else counts as proof for a buyer? Well, endorsements by their friend. So, if you were referred and endorsed, that counts as proof in their mind. See what I mean? I mean, their friend may have no idea, but it doesn't matter. Different environment. Okay, so there you go. Law number 5, you've got to be able to articulate and prove it. And law number 6 is mindset. Right now, what I've noticed is I'm not an architect. I could never be an architect. I would be a terrible architect. But what I've noticed in working with architects is for some reason, when people first come to us or, have worked with me, there's a general lack of confidence around fees, right? And I always wonder why. And I remember asking the first architect I ever worked with, I said, where are you out of 10 for your ability? She said, about an 8. I said, where are you for your projects that you're working on? She said, about a 5. Where are you for your fees out of 10? She said, about a 3, 4. I said, why so low if you're an 8 out of 10 architect? She said, and then she started to rattle things off. And I'm a woman, was the first one. I said, what's that got to do with it? Oh, well, it's harder for women. Okay, anything else? Yes, I'm young. What's that got to do with it? Oh, well, people, expect that if you're a bit older, you'll charge. Really? Okay. Any other reasons? Yes. Because I'm a small one-woman band, I've got low overheads. What's that got to do with it? Well, if you've got bigger overheads, you're going to charge more money. Well, maybe the reason you've got bigger overheads is because you're charging bigger money, right? So we talked about all these things, and I managed to convince her in the end that they're all just in her head, right? Woman, young, small overheads. And I know they are because when we work with all sorts of clients, most people lack confidence when it comes to around fees. They've all got reasons as to why their fees aren't higher, right? Maybe my clients, wouldn't pay that. Now, is that a fact or is that a belief? It's usually a belief. It's usually a belief. And I know that because everybody I've worked on to put their fees up, I've never had someone come back when they've done it properly. No one's ever come back and said, I'm losing business because I put my fees up. No one, right? So most people price from fear that they'll lose the deal, fear of what the other person, the client will think. And from what I've seen, most architects are lovely people, and architects are pleasers. They like to keep everybody happy, right? It's good to keep people happy with your work and delivering a great job, but when it comes to quoting your fees, that's not a good time to keep everybody happy. Remember what I said at the start, 50% of people you should be refusing, you should be turning away because either they or their project are not good enough. Right? So pricing from fear is a really bad idea. It affects your fees. It affects your income. It affects where you live. It affects the car you drive. It affects how you live life. It affects how you sleep at night. Right? You've got to master this art of pricing properly. You must do. It's such a fast thing it changes everything overnight when you do it properly. Okay, where does confidence come from? Well, confidence comes from, I guess, knowing what your value really is, right? Now, if you're going to be a generalist, that's kind of hard. It's harder to know your value when you're a generalist and there's a lot of other people like you. But when you go through these laws and start to narrow yourself down, narrow the supply of you and your type of services and increase the value, be able to explain and prove the value, then your value in your own mind goes up. And the first sale you've got to make is to yourself, right? You've got to be strong in yourself when you're charging higher fees. You've got to know and have the attitude that, I am better value than the other options. If you don't believe it, the client, you've got to sell to yourself first. Having a good peer group is really important. Other people who are doing similar thing to you, i.e., studying the art of winning better projects, studying the art of raising their fees, studying the art of increasing their value, studying the art of increasing their scarcity. It helps to be surrounded by other people who are also having the same fears as you. So having a peer group's a good idea. And having the collateral. Now, sometimes, particularly at the start, you may not have the confidence to say things in a certain way that I tell you to say it, right? Or some of these ideas in theory, yes, I get it all, Richard. It makes sense. But what exactly do I say and how do I say it? Or in fact, even if I did say it the way you tell me to say it, if I follow the scripts, I would still lack a bit of confidence. That's why sometimes it helps to have collateral, stuff that's pre-written, videos that are pre-built, which do some of this positioning for you. And remember that quote here, every battle is won or lost before it's ever fought. Sometimes having that collateral which supports you being, effectively deploying a lot of these laws, having that type of stuff pre-made, you can send it to people. You don't have to think too much about it. You can send them a series of emails or a document or a video, and having that there, it kind of, the client turns up to some degree pre-sold. They have some expectations around your fees, some expectations around their project, cost range. If you're in a position to do that, it's all been done, and expectations have probably been set. Okay. Now, the third thing around mindset that you probably want to have. So one is you don't want to be pricing from fear. You need to know your value. Second one is you need to be confident, and that's a bit of a work on, and you got to surround yourself with the right people. The third one is you from a mindset point of view, you need to know or take the attitude, because it's true, that I am not for everybody, right? I am not for everybody. I have as that movie Taken says, I have a particular set of skills, right? Skills that I've learned over a long period of time that make someone like me very valuable for the right type of person, but not everybody. Not everybody you are valuable for. And you got to know that, right? So you got to know who you're for. You got to know who you're not for. You got to know what value, what unique value that you can bring that other people can't bring, right? And you take the attitude when you're speaking to these people, these inquiries, that you are qualifying. I'm qualifying you to see if you're a fit to work with me. Right now, at the moment, I know most of this people on this live stream will be going into an initial meeting almost feeling like it's a sales call and feeling like you are trying to sell yourself to the client. That ironically doesn't work as well as when you go into the meeting. And if you've done all these other things, right? And you take the approach that you are qualifying them. You are looking to see if they are a fit for you. Because remember, only 50% of the projects are actually worth taking on. There's too many homeless people out there, right? And you let them know that you are qualifying them. They're qualifying you too, but you're also qualifying them, right? It's a mindset thing. You should let them know in advance that you say no a lot, right? You tell them that. You might tell them you've got a waiting list. You tell them, I don't take on everybody. I need to see if they're a fit, right? I need, so I'm happy to meet with you, but please be aware that I don't take on everybody I meet, even if they've got a project, and I'm not a good fit for everybody, but certainly happy to meet you, find out about your project, find out about you. And if I'm the best person for you, I'll let you know. If I'm not, and I know someone who's better, I can make a suggestion as to who might be a better fit for you. How does that sound?